What's up, ACTers? Welcome back. This video is meant to keep you guys warm for your upcoming tests. Many of those in my April class were getting prepared for the June test, or whenever you're going to take your test. This is a way to not only do some practice sets right now and get some good work in, but also kind of a model. I'm hoping this will just sort of model for you what you should keep doing going forward, whether you're watching a video or not. In fact, one thing you can do is watch this video over and over again and just do a different practice set each time. Obviously, my question explanations will be not so useful if you didn't do this section, but it could still help. So let's dig right in, guys. First, I want to make sure you guys have the right materials. First, if any of you were in my ACT class or have done ACT tutoring with us, we're going to be working out of this book. But don't worry if you don't have this book. I'm going to show you where online to get the material we're doing. But you're going to flip towards the back of this, and you're going to look for practice test Frank. So let me actually share my screen with you guys and crank that one up here. Forgive the picture of my children. If you are looking in the ACT full book, practice test Frank is on, I believe, page 275. Yeah, there it is. So we're going to be here. We're going to do one set of each, or one passage or so, or some questions from each section, 1 through 4 of this test. I'm going to hop back to the page I was on here for a moment. But those of you who do not have this test, let me show you where to get it. So you want to go to the website crackact.com, which is a terrific website. Well, actually, it's a terrible website design-wise, but it's got a lot of great content on it. And, you know, you have to forgive them if they need to pay for their hosting by showing you ads of HIV studies. Anyway, we're going way, way, way back in time for this, all the way to the December 2008 form here, form 67A. My God, it's old. It's so old. Why are we doing this? Why is this still in our book? I don't know. Don't worry about it. The ACT doesn't really change. It's still good practice. So crank this open, and oh my gosh, you have to go through another Supreme Tutoring. Don't go with them, they suck. You want to go with this download link down here. Are you going to really make me download this? See, this is why it's a garbage website. Anyway, you're going to get to this super old ACT, still good practice. The first passage is Miami time, so make sure you have found that. I guess we'll work off here. It doesn't really matter. It's all the same. It's all horrible. That's crackact.com, and then find the 67A form. In any case, what we want to be looking at here is this practice test, whether you're pulling it from your book on paper or whether it's from this test. Also, I want you guys to get your hands on this ACT goal sheet. Now, there's something very similar to it in the beginning of your ACT full book if you've got that. But also, if you just go to our website, pjtestprep.com, at the top currently, hopefully this won't change by the time you watch this video, you'll see down here, download our SAT and ACT goal sheet. So click that ACT one, and then you can just download this sucker here. What you want to do, if you haven't already, is write down what kind of English score, math score, reading score, science score you'd like to see on your test. And, you know, take some time later to read this document. But basically what it says is, you know, if you're trying to get a 36 in the English section, well, that's pretty simple. You can miss 0% of the questions. So you can miss 0 questions on any given passage, and you can miss 0 on the whole entire thing. Obviously, that's pretty easy if you're going for a 36. Where it gets a little bit more nuanced, and you might want to utilize this curve here, is if you're going for not a perfect score, because you're not a mutant robot testing machine, you're trying to get, you know, a 25, which is still a really good score. That means that overall, while doing a full section, you would be able to get about 30% of the questions wrong. Which means, since we are not going to do a full section today, although if you've watched this video for the 4th time in a row, you may have graduated up to doing a full section, you want to be aiming for, in the 15 English questions we're going to do, or the 9 math questions we're going to do, or the 10 reading questions we're going to do, or the 10 science questions we're going to do, a 9-minute drill. Basically, we'd like to use the number 9 because it happens to divide nicely into different sections. This is how many you could miss. So generally you can miss about 3 if you're going to do 10 to 15 of these, 9 to 15 of these questions. So let's keep that in mind. And in fact, let's say you were going for a 25, you would want to then translate that number down to your little goal set here. This is going to be the first step always when you practice, is set a goal and figure out what you're actually trying to do to accomplish that goal. So part 1 will be to just write down here, you can put today's date here, and you can write down, for instance, in this box, English, then we're going to do math, then we're going to do reading, then we're going to do science. So you can do more of these later. There's a bunch of these. And for this first 2 pages, this is part 1, question blocks, which means we're going to do these 9-minute drills over and over again. We're going to set our goal here, how many you're trying to miss. This person's trying to miss only 2, which would get them roughly a 28 if they're able to keep that pace up. And then they're going to actually, once you're done, you're going to write down how many you actually missed. And then a really important step here is to make some notes for yourself about, okay, so what did I do wrong? Did I mess up by not reading the chart closely enough on question 2? On question 7, I didn't read the question well enough. Oh, okay, if I can just remember to do that. Or if question 11, if it's just too hard, ask somebody about that one. You know, ask a tutor, or ask me, ask whoever you know who's good at this section, and maybe they can help you. That way, when you repeat this process and you do the same thing next time, you won't get that question wrong again. So the first 2 pages of this are for you to keep track of your, 9-minute drills, or if you pass your 9-minute drill, I would suggest doubling it and doing an 18-minute drill with twice as many questions, twice as many passages, until you're comfortably on pace to get it. If you're going to try to run a 5-mile race in 30 minutes, you can multiply that out, and that's a pace of a 5-minute mile. That's incredibly fast. But let's say you are an Olympic level runner and you're going for 5 minutes. Well, if you can run 1 mile in 5 minutes, then theoretically you could run wait, good God, my math is horrible. No, that would be a 6-minute mile. Good thing we're not doing math. Anyway, yeah, so 6-minute mile, if you can run 1 mile in 6 minutes, you should be able to run 5 of them in 30 minutes, assuming you can keep that pace up. Now, to make sure you can keep that pace up, phase 2, once you graduate here, will be to go through entire timed sections where, again, you're allowed this many, and your goal is to miss this many or fewer. This actually got filled in for a previous student who was trying to miss a certain amount, but cross these numbers off and replace them with whatever your goal would be on this section, and then you can do something similar. Regardless of how you go about this, your goal is kind of always the same. Your process is always the same. First, you want to review previous tests, sections, cards, etc., to recall what mistakes you've made in the past and what you do remember this time. Those of you who prepped with me already have some ideas of the things that you stink at and you want to try to remember. Then, like we said, you set your goals and your timings, adjust these goals from last time if you need. If you've already hit that 25 and now you're ready to go for a 28, go ahead and adjust those numbers. Then we're going to do a timed practice section, and that's what we're going to jump into in just a moment. From your practice materials, we're doing practice test Frank, aka ACT from before time. And then you're going to check your answers, enter your results into the progress sheets. Did you meet your goal? No, then repeat the process again. Do it tomorrow, do it right after, whatever you got to do. And then yes, take a break and then prove it again another day or work your way up. So that is there on page 197 of your full books if you have that. Let's hop back to where we're going today, which is again, practice test Frank. And we're going to start with the English. So the way I'm going to structure this is we're going to do just one passage from the English and the reading. We're going to do probably 2 of these passages from science. That would actually be a little bit more than a 9-minute drill. We're going to try to do 10 questions. So basically however much time we can get done, or however many questions we can get right out of 10 in the 9 minutes or so that we have. And then for the math, we're just going to pick 9 questions. I'll kind of go out of the middle, pick not the hardest ones, but not the easiest ones either. We'll pick a selection probably in the middle of the set. So guys, without further ado, let's dive in. First, a couple notes on English review. Guys, you've all learned this by now, but remember that the ACT just tests the same 7 grammar concepts over and over again. And the 8th thing that they do are these assignment questions. So for instance, this first one is going to be a connector question, particularly accenting on the punctuation marks. Question 2, look, it's got intro text here. That is one of your assignment questions. So you're going to treat that one differently. It may very well not have anything to do at all with grammar. In fact, we'll give an explanation of that one in a minute. And then questions 3 and 4 go back to being about grammar again. Remember those concepts. If you stink at connectors, learn those rules. Things like semicolons are basically periods. They connect to complete sentences. If you mess up on verbs a lot, remember your tenses and make sure they're agreeing with the subject that's actually doing that verb. For assignment questions, just do whatever they ask, even if it's the opposite of what you normally do. We like brevity. We like short things usually, but sometimes an assignment question will say, give us a long answer. Disregard everything you know otherwise and just focus on the assignment. So as you will get better and better at this, you'll start to see which things you still stink at. I recommend categorizing each one. But take a moment, if you need to, pause the video and review your previous notes to think about which things you want to make sure you can do this time on the English to make sure you're going to get your optimal score. So feel free to pause now if you want to review. When you're ready, unpause, and we will go through this section. Okay, so let's pretend that you are now finished with your review and you are ready for another 9-minute drill. So you can set yourself a timer now, set it for 9 minutes. That's how long you would have to get through passage 1, which is questions 1 through 15. Is that backwards? I think, not 51, 15. You're gonna do this set now, this Miami time passage, and I want you guys to see how it goes. So, without further ado, guys, let's start this passage. Go ahead and pause this, and when you're ready to resume, when your 9 minutes is up, go ahead and unpause, and then we'll talk about answers and explanations. Okay, congrats, you guys are now done with one more section. And if you're not pausing this video because you don't know how to work YouTube, who are you? What year is this? Anyway, you want to check your answers always, always, always in the very back of the book. So you can just pop down to the final page of Practice Test Frank where we can see our answers are all here. These are the ones you want to look at in the English section. Answers are 1C, 2F, 3D. Yada, you don't need me to read these. You can see them right here. Feel free to pause and grade and record your answers on that goal sheet that you've now printed out. When you're ready, I'm going to go over just a couple of these. You're welcome to email me with additional questions, but I'm going to focus on the first 3 of these to just give you guys some, feedback on what these questions are like, how these ones work. So let's pop back to that page where we will see how we can do a couple of these questions and just some sort of reminders. So, on question number 1, this is a connector question. And I always like to, when I miss a question, I'm going to just kind of assume that you missed this one, or all 3 of these. If you didn't, feel free to listen to this explanation, see if there's any nuances that could make you more sure or faster. If not, you can certainly just skip this part. But if I missed this question, I would write down, okay, this is a connector question. Oh, shoot, and I missed it because I forgot how commas or semicolons work. So I'm going to say / punctuation. So that's what kind of an issue it is versus this one. If I missed this question, this was an assignment question. This is you could call this word choice, but I would actually probably just call this brevity. Sometimes there's some overlap between these, but not to give it away, but we're going to be going with the shortest answer on this one. For reasons that have to do with some word choice explanations, but I'll get there in a minute. So the first one says, my family is part of Miami tribe, a Native American people with strong ties to territory in present-day Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. Now, you noticed I paused for a super awkward long time for that comma, and that is what you should do with commas. Commas are pauses after all, and if it sounds really awkward to put a pause that's that long there, then don't select answer choice A and don't select answer choice B. I sort of hate this color, so let's switch to something better. Oh yes, now it's answer choices are bloody. That's perfect. Okay, so I don't really want to pause there, and the other choice is whether I would have a comma here or a semicolon here. Now let's read it. Apparently there is going to be a pause there, so I guess I don't even need to read that. But the question between a comma and a semicolon is, like I said, a semicolon is just a period. Could you put a period here? Could you say, my family is part of the Miami tribe, Okay, that is a complete sentence, but what about what would follow? A Native American people with strong territory in different places. That is not a complete sentence. You cannot do a semicolon here. Don't get me wrong, the ACT does love them some semicolons. Semicolons will be right a lot, but it's not right here, which leaves us with C. That would be a good place to put a comma. Part of the Miami tribe, a Native American people with strong ties to these different areas. So read it with pauses, eliminate parts that you don't need, and see how the comma, the connector punctuation marks flow through and make it better with C. All right, let's move on. Growing up in the Midwest, I often heard my grandmother joke about Miami time when she was doing something she loved, whether it was making freezer jam or researching travel history. Okay, now that seemed grammatically fine, but oh, this is an assignment question, so that's irrelevant. What are they asking us to do is the only thing that matters here. Let me highlight the part that's important. At this point, the writer would like to provide a glimpse into her grandmother's interests. Fine. Given that all the choices are true, which one best accomplishes this goal of giving a glimpse into her mother's interests? Now, a lot of times these questions, especially when they're long like this, do not just want you to pick the shortest one. They'd like you to actually go with something maybe a little bit more specific. Often specific is bad. Specific is very bad in the reading section. This is not the reading section though, this is the English section. And here they're asking you to give a glimpse into her interests. So I want the one that is the most specific and gives the best glimpse. This, as written, is actually pretty good, which is why we're gonna go with F for this one. It actually tells you she likes making freezer jam and researching tribal histories. This is a super vague version of that, doesn't give us much of a glimpse. It says here that she'd like to teach me, but it doesn't tell you what they are. This is just like a more vague version of the correct answer. So no, we want F, it's more specific. That is what they asked for. If they asked for a non-specific answer, we'd do that. Your job is just to do what the boss says here. Question 3, this is the last one we're gonna do here, but as I said, you're welcome to email me any other questions. Whenever she was doing something she loved, she refused to be rushed in a hurry. Now, you might think that sounds a little weird, and it sounds more than weird. It sounds atrocious. We want to keep this short. All of these other answers are basically just redundancies. Hurried or rushed. Hurried is rushed. It's the same word twice. Need to go faster or rush. Again, you're just using more words when you could use fewer. So we want to always try to keep this as short as we can. The ACT values brevity. Of course, the 3 exceptions to that are if the shortest one is grammatically wrong, which is not the case here. If the shortest one leaves out important information, no, the only other information the other answers provide is redundant. Or if it's an assignment question and they specifically said not to do the shortest one. Notice here, F actually might be the longest one. So, well, but you said it's short. Well, unless they tell you not to do that, and they're telling you not to do that here. So, those are 3 fairly common question types. We see a lot of brevity. We see a ton of connector questions. That's their most famous, the most common grammar concept on this test. And also assignment questions is the other thing they test the most. So questions 1, 2, and 3, not necessarily the hardest questions you've ever seen, but 3 very commonly represented questions. If you did miss any of these, all of these will be thrown at you many times on the actual test. And so you need to make sure you can get this. So write these down, make these notes. Let me know if you have other ones. Let's stop that English one now, and let's move on to some math. For the math guys, we are going to be on the second section of, that's the wrong one, wrong version of it. The second section of the practice test Frank, or the super old ACT we're doing. Now, we're going to start the same way as we always begin, with the goal sheet. If you haven't already written your math goal right up here, do that. And then let's think about what it's going to take to get the goal that you've hit. Basically, you just follow these instructions. Those who've been in our full course, you may notice this goal sheet's a little different than the one that's on pages 5, 7, 9, and 11 of your book, and that's fine. You can do whichever one you want. But the course is always the same. As we've said, step 1 is to now review and think about what ones you've missed in the past. So this might be a good time to go ahead and pause the video and review previous math sections that you've done to keep in mind which ones are right on the border for you that you want to remember certain concepts or certain tricks. Then we're going to record our notes and our goals on the sheet below here. Step 3 is we're going to do a actual section, the one we just looked at, and step 4 then will be to review it afterwards. Well, I guess my new numbering is a little off from what this is, but you get the idea. So on the math test, let's not do questions 1, 2, 3, 4. Those, it's not like the SAT where they go way easier to way harder, but they do, I guess, at least in complexity and content, step it up a little. So it's usually best to start somewhere in the middle. I think we'll actually start on question 30. So 30 if your screen is mirrored. What we want to be looking at here is how many we need to do. We're going to do 30 through, and this is a good inclusive math review concept, it's 30 through 38 that you're going to be doing, because if you're counting 30 and you're counting 38, that's 9 questions. So in your goal sheet, you will write that down. For instance, if you were, again, going for a, I don't know, 28, so we put math here. Sorry, math would go here. Today's date would go here. If I'm going for a 28, generally that means I can miss 2 of these. And then I would note on how many I missed. And even if, hey, I hit my goal, yay, you still might write down, oh, I missed question 31 and I missed question 37. Make whatever notes you need to. Once again, it's the writing the note down that's important. It doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter how. You just need to remember this sometime, or you may make the same mistake again next time. If you really don't want to use these charts here, you'd prefer to write it down on flashcards, or write it down in an Excel spreadsheet you've got going, or write it down right in the test and carry that around, or take a picture of the freaking thing with your phone so you can just scroll through these instead of being on Instagram. That's what you want to do so that you can remember what you'll want to do next time. Okay, so let's give you guys 9 minutes once again to do questions 30 through 38. Let's see how it goes, keeping in mind any things you want to remember from last time, and then I'll go over just a couple of these. So go ahead and pause this, set yourself a timer for 9 minutes, and unpause when you're ready. Go ahead. Okay, questions 30 through 38 obviously are answered in the back, so go ahead and hit there. We're looking at these questions. Oops, excuse me. 30 through 38, your answers are there. We're going to go over the first 3, which are G, C, and I think actually we'll skip a few. I want to go over 34, so that one's going to be K, but we'll get back there in a second. So let's have a look at those questions, and let's see if any of this applies to you guys. So let's start with these first 2 here. Couple of notes. 30, although it doesn't look like it, is it? Well, it does look like it. It's a geometry question. And what we want to do on this one is, if you want to, you can just remake the diagram so it's a little clearer without these bozos standing in the way. And we always want to label everything that we've got. It's actually kind of a poor drawing here. Also, just the scan here is really horrible. But the father is 75 inches tall. It says that right here, even if you can't see the 75. It's written over the black background, knuckleheads. Kiddo is 50 inches tall here. The dad's shadow is 120. Should just be using their diagram. I would suggest just using theirs, but it's cleaner this way. My handwriting's bad enough already, so in any case. What I'm looking for is this. And what we've got going here is, remember, the ACT only cares about 3. Why am I frozen in such a grotesque position there? Can't even do it again. The ACT only cares about 3 shapes: circles, triangles, and rectangles. Obviously, we're dealing with triangles here, more than one of them. And what's going on here is we have 2 similar triangles. Sure, you could prove it by recognizing this angle's the same in each one, and these are parallel by nature, so these angles will be the same. They'll be 90, and then that leaves the third one being the same, AAA. Who cares about theorems? What we just need to know, though, is we got a little triangle and we got a big triangle. Big triangle is 75, and 120, and the little triangle is 50 and x. And here there's a number of ways you can set up for proportion. You might also even be able to save some time on this if you spot that, hey, wait a minute, this one is basically just half as much more than this one. Or another way to look at it is this 50 is 2/3 of this. So if you're able to do this mental math and say, well, what would be 2/3 of that? That's just 80. Then we can go back in our drawing and recognize that the difference between 80 and 120 here will be 40. So if you didn't get that one, think about how they love hiding triangles in problems. Remember that they only care about 3 triangles. Even if you can't prove that these triangles are similar, I mean, they always end up being similar. They can't do this problem if they're not. It would just be way too hard and beyond the scope of the test. So keep that in mind, that's the way geometry problems work. The rule for every geometry problem, of course, is just keep drawing things. All right, 31, we have the standard coordinate plane. What is the distance and coordinates between -3, -2, and 5, 5? Once again, you could draw this. Now, I'm going to go against my own rule here just for the sake of speed, but, well, I'm not really going to because you always can do this problem by drawing. -3, -2 is going to be here, and 5, 5 here somewhere, and you're trying to find this thing. Ooh, that's an ND line. You do not need to know the distance formula. These tests are not huge on formulas. You don't need to have this memorized as long as you can remember that all the distance formula is just a right triangle. So you always just drop a triangle in here. And if you were doing this the slightly slower drawing way, I mean, first of all, look at this distance, by the way. There's no way this is 5. And these numbers are just the teeniest, tiniest little things ever. So that's not obviously going to be the distance. It's already narrowed down to C and E. There's a little estimating there for you. And you could just, I don't know, C looks fancier, so let's pick that one. Well, it is going to be C in a minute. But the reason why it's C is because you don't need the distance formula if you can just remember that this here, -3 to +5, what you're really looking at is that this is just 8. And then this dude is just 7. This is just a right triangle with one side 8 and one side 7. So if you square both of these, you get 64, you get 49, you add them together, and you get 113. Rooted, of course, is your answer. And you can stop doing work as soon as you know which one it is. Don't do more work. So that actually is another geometry problem. We had 2 in a row. This one didn't look like it at first, but of course it is. The test is not all geometry. It's not even mostly geometry. There's more algebra on this test than there is geometry. It just so happened that the first 2 of ours were geometry. So, you know, if you got both of those right, don't get overconfident. There will be lots of other types of problems, but, you know, sometimes you do get a couple things in a row. 32, I'm going to skip right now, although, by the way, it's probably not F. Probably not G either. It's probably one of these 3 that look the same. But Chaitin, the name is Chaitin. We're going to skip this problem because Chaitin's name is stupid. Let's actually do 34 instead, because I think that's more something I can help you with. It's also, just say 32 is actually a pretty good problem as well. But 34 is something that like occurs all the time on the ACT, whereas you may not get a question like 32. Well, you probably will, but you'll get more 34s. You get 34s all day long. They love algebra problems on this test. This is also a great opportunity for a trick if you want to use one. Remember, as we always say with the math, there's 3 ways you can do it. You can either do the math, and if you're good at math or the problem's easy, just do it. And then you can also do a trick like make up numbers or steal numbers or whatever. And if you don't want to do that way, I won't do it. But you can always just tell the problem to screw off and go do something else, go to something easier. 34 says we've got this and it's equivalent to one of these. The 2 ways to do this problem, well, there's actually quite a few ways to do it. You could try to, I mean, please don't, but I guess you could do this with like a division of polynomials thing where you're like, why would you ever do it this way? 12x squared divides into 2x plus 3. This goes, no, just don't do it that way. Instead, you could, anytime you see algebra, guys, you can always just make up a number. Like, couldn't you just say that x is equal to 1? Well, wouldn't it be easier to say x is equal to 0? No, you can't do that because the 0 opens up in the black hole bottom of this, and we all die, and we don't want that to happen. So in this case, you would just say x is 1, top is 5, bottom is 12. Do any of these come out to be 5? Why can't I draw 5 all of a sudden? 5, thank you. Well, that's not 5/12. That's not 5/12. So if you take 1 and put it here, that's not 5/12. Maybe it's it's probably going to be k, because this doesn't seem like it's going to be 5/12. But guys, don't ever be afraid to use a sweet trick. Make up numbers is a really nice one on this one. You can also do this algebraically. And probably half of you have spotted this, but anytime you have two things being added over a common denominator here, you can just split them up. So 2x over 12x squared, and then plus 3 over 12x squared. And then you just go about canceling things and simplifying. So that becomes a 6 on the bottom. This x ruins one of your 2's. You have 1 over 6x. And then I've already got the answer, but this would ruin down into 1 over 4x squared. Oh, yeah, right. That's how you get k. That's probably well, that is the algebra way to do it. It's probably the fastest simplifying way to do it as well. But if you didn't like that way or you didn't spot that, and more importantly, even if you did get this one algebraically, but you're like ever stuck on an algebra problem, you can always rely on these tricks. Make up numbers, or the answer choices are all numbers. Like in this one, you could plug these in. I guess it actually doesn't really work very well on 33, but consider those tricks. Those are the ways to do it. Okay, that's enough for math. Please let me know if you have any other questions. Take your time to review these. You should be pausing this video and taking as much time as you want to make sure that you know what the heck you're doing and reviewing for next time. So let's get out of here and go to the reading set. So I'm actually going to skip the passage 2, mostly because I think in class we did passage 1 already, so I don't want to be redundant. Oh, by the way, if you didn't figure this out already, if you already had done this practice test or the passages that we're doing, just do a different one and then skip my answers and explanations because you'll be reviewing a different set. But you can do the same thing over and over with this video to guide you, or just on your own. Passages 1 and 3 are always the story passages. This weird one is prose fiction. But we're going to do passage 2, which is social science. It's one of the fact passages. And so let's review the way that we tackle any reading set. Number 1, we read the passage. Sure, there are a couple of questions that you can do by just scanning for those answers, but not very many of them. So if you're trying for something higher than like a 23, you kind of do need to read the thing first. So step 1, we read it. Step 2, we approach the answer or the question, which might mean rephrasing it or at least making some kind of a prediction, possibly doing a little bit of research. I hadn't done this passage in quite a while, so I just went back before this video recording and redid it. And as is very common, what I noticed is that about a third of them I was able to do without reviewing anything. And another third of them, you kind of needed to go and review and look for specific details that even I didn't really remember from reading it, because it was something like, what color shirt is the guy wearing in line 4? It's like, I don't have the mental space to remember that. And then the other ones are ones where I had to review just briefly, like, wait, what was passage 6 about it, paragraph 6 again? Oh, right, that was the one where this happened. And that allowed me to get the question right quickly with just a little bit of review. So the lesson there is, do not be afraid to review. But if you're reviewing a lot on every single question, you're probably going to run out of time. So try to read the passage well enough. Our goal is always to get that main idea. But ideally, know kind of what the flow is a little bit. You don't have to remember every paragraph. You can look those up. But your goal should be able to say in one sentence, what was the main idea of what I just read? And then if they referred you back to a particular paragraph, if you reviewed it, you should be able to say, oh, right, that was the paragraph where they kind of talked about this. If you lost a few lines here or there, it's okay. The detail stuff you can look back for. You have time to scan, but do try to get a few things to save yourself some time. So let's review on our goal sheet. Write your goal down. Again, I'm going fast here, picking up speed, but pause this and make sure you're writing down your goal for the reading. How many of these can you miss? What did you suck at last time? What do you need to try to remember? Do you need to take more time reading the passage? One other caveat is, although you get 9 minutes to do a passage and all of its questions, if you're trying to do all 4 passages, a lot of students, more than half, probably 3/4 of people aren't trying to do all 4 passages. If you're just trying to get a 25 or 26, shouldn't say just, because those are really good scores, you only need to do 3 passages to get a 25 or 26. If you could do a good job on 3 passages and then just skip the 4th one, you could totally get a 26 or 27. I had a kid get a 29 that way one time. He just didn't even read the 4th one. And if you're going to skip one, it would be whichever one is the boringest. So if you already know, yeah, I can't do all 4 of them, that's too much, you actually would get more like 12 minutes to do a passage because you're going to skip the last one. And you could take that extra time here. But for those of you aspiring to those top scores in the 30s, or anybody just trying to keep this moving along, you would have about 9 minutes per. So that's what we're going to take for this. Write your goals down. Think about the things that you want to remember for last time. And then when you're ready, let's go to passage 2 on page 306 of your full book, or page 32 of Practice Test Frank, or whatever it's known as on the test. And go ahead and pause this. Give yourself 9 minutes. Okay, so hopefully when you read this, you remembered sort of the main idea. This is really about 3D modeling of architectural structures as it relates specifically to the Roman Colosseum. Basically, they're saying they used to think the Roman Colosseum was like amazing and almost perfect, and it was so great and all in all. And then when they modeled it using the 3D technology they have, they realized, oh, maybe the upper floors like weren't quite so good. Maybe there were some issues with it. Again, I'm getting probably even more specific than I need to, but if you were like, this is about 3D modeling about the Roman Colosseum and some other things, and the main deal with the Colosseum was that when they 3D modeled it, they're like, oh wait, maybe it isn't like this genius architecture thing as much as we thought. It's still good. The tone is still positive about how they feel about it, but it maybe isn't as perfect as they thought. That's the main idea. If you didn't get that, got to work on your reading a little bit. Practicing reading a lot. Practice reading a boring article on a boring website and summarizing what it's about in one tweet. Just keep reading. Just like how you used to be able to not run when you were a toddler. Now you can easily run and it's no big deal. Humans are very good at getting better at things. If you're not as good as you need to be at reading, you just need to do more of it. It's not too late. Okay, I'm going to go over a couple of these. I think we'll just do the first 3 again, because these are kind of a nice mixture of things. Step 2, of course, is to review the questions before we even look at the answers. The main function of the first paragraph is to. Now, this would be one where probably a quick review would be good, but hopefully all that's needed. You might just have forgotten what the first paragraph was specifically about, but if you review, everybody knows that it's an architectural model, or is it? Perhaps you even marked this up. That's one thing I didn't talk about during the reading phase, is do mark it up as much as you need to. Some people like to write notes in the margin. Others people like to underline things. Do whatever you need to do to get the main idea. So it's said that, oh wait, maybe this one detail about it's not so great. So what is the purpose in the passage as a whole? That's kind of what these always say. Let's look through the answers. I like to do what we call yes, no, maybe, where if you find one that's amazing, you just pick it. If you find one that you hate, you kill it. But you remember the 3 wrong answer choices, never said that, too extreme and out of scope. And if you aren't sure, don't be afraid to say maybe. So state, then question a widely held notion about the Colosseum. That seems perhaps moderately decent. Let's, wait, where's my markup tools? Oh wait, I remember how to do this. Oh wait, no, never mind. I need to do it the gangster. I'll just talk through this one and then I'll get the visuals involved in the next one. So A, I'd say is maybe, perhaps even promising. Praise the Colosseum as an architectural and engineering marvel. No, only at first, and then they question it. So you're missing part of the answer here. But they do that. Yes, they do, but they asked about the whole entire first paragraph, not just the first sentence of that paragraph. Later, they question it. So A looks better than B. Show how people moved quickly in and out of the Colosseum. They didn't really show how they did that. That's too detailed. Also, kind of really never said that. That's another wrong answer choice. Point out a flaw in the design and construction. Okay, not bad. And how it was later corrected, wrong. So all you need is one word or one phrase to kill the whole entire thing. A, perhaps some of you had that all along, but A is the best answer. So pick that. That is one where you might review a little, but probably don't need to review too much. Now, 12, you might need to review a little bit more. This is one of those obnoxious detail-y questions, although there's a couple of tricks here that I'll remind you of. The passage indicates that in its research on the Colosseum, the UCLA assembled team of Roman architectural experts made use of all of the following sources of information except, I don't remember this. I remember they mentioned UCLA because that's my dream school, but I don't remember what techniques they used. Where the heck am I going to find this? They didn't give me any page numbers. Now, sometimes they do. Like over here in 17, they give you line 81. Here in the next question, they give you these lines. And that does make question 12 a little harder. But here's some good news. Whenever they don't give you the line number, they already kind of feel bad about this. And so what they'll usually do is they'll give you pretty close representations of the actual wording. They also, even if they don't give you the page number or line number rather, always give you something to scale for or to scan for. So in this case, UCLA perhaps might be a good all caps thing to look for. And if you start scrambling around for UCLA, you start seeing it appear here. So actually they do mention it here. This is a little tricky. This is the first place you see it. But I didn't know what UCLA stands for because I'm from Kentucky and I don't know what to tell you. In any case, you might not find it here and then you might just read a little bigger and find it there. So let's look at this. They studied architectural amphitheaters, drawings of the Colosseum, records of the building construction. They also examined what was left of the upper hallways. That kind of tells you things that they did. There's another gimme here that's really nice. A lot of these things sound like stuff they kind of said, like they just directly said H. So we're going to eliminate that because remember, we're looking for the one that's accept. They also give you a nice clue here in what ends up being the correct answer. You might just say, I don't ever remember them talking about clay at all. And because this question is already hard, they're probably throwing you a bone here and being like, if you can find the word clay in one of these answers and you've read it well enough to maybe not have seen that, you'll be able to get this answer. You can read a little bit more detail into seeing why F and G are things they mentioned and eliminated, but you don't always need to weed these precisely. Sometimes you just need to bushwhack your way through the jungle. I've had a lot of students do J and say, I kind of think it's J, but I guess I'm not really sure. I don't have time though, this is such a fast section. I'm just gonna pick that and I'll put a square around 12 to come back to later. And if you run out of time, you still got the right answer. But that's a good way to do ones that you feel like more research could be done on, but you just don't have the time for that. So J is right. 13. This is one that you hopefully won't have to do too much research on. Now, it does get detailed when they talk about Frischur attributes the theory of the entire Colosseum was a masterpiece of circulation directly to. You could review those lines if you want, but you also might gain time here. And for you top score seekers, I might suggest here, just think about this for a second. This is how we always treat the big, broad, global questions is, let's just think about that phrase. The entire Colosseum was a masterpiece of circulation. Is that true? No. As they state in the passage, it turned out that it had some issues that maybe they didn't think about at first. So all of these answers sort of say that, but a lot of them are just things that can be eliminated. Where were the experiments? Sure, something was flawed, but experiments was never something they mentioned. Misleading computer models. No, this passage is more about how the models are actually helpful in helping us avoid other misleading things. So don't get sucked into words like flawed or misleading. You're not looking for one word that's good, you're looking for one word that's bad. Erroneous data, that seems a little weird, about the building's bottom floor. Some get tempted into this answer because what happened was people made assumptions based on what they knew about the building's bottom floor and extrapolated it incorrectly to what the upper floors were like. This is different than that. This is saying we just had bad data about the bottom floor, and that is, they never said that. They never said we had erroneous data about the bottom floor. Which leaves us with, of course, D. false assumptions left unquestioned by most scholars. They're careful not to say all scholars because probably somebody somewhere questioned it. But D is right. They're just assuming that because the bottom floor was good, the other floors were equally as great, and that's not the case when they found out through more analysis. So be careful about this. I like this question because it's a great example of how just like one word ruins wrong answer choices. And you're not looking for the one you like the most. You're looking for the one that's not wrong. Because after all, not wrong means right. And there's always one right answer and 3 wrong ones. It's just not always the way you'd like it to be. The right one isn't always full of the exact prediction you made. Predictions are still useful, but you got to be careful when you get it narrowed down to 2. Stop worrying about which one you like better and start thinking about which one's not wrong. Okay, so that's the reading. Take a moment, mark any notes down you want. Again, feel free to pause the video. When you're ready, we'll tackle science. All right, so when you're ready for science, let's look at passages. Let's do passages 3 and 4. Passage 1 is not that hard. Passage 2 is actually kind of tricky. But I like passages 3 and 4 because they look just horrific. Look at this god-awful looking thing here. But remember, guys, no matter how evil the passage is, there's more. No matter how bad the passages look, most of the questions in the science are just point and click. You just get the general familiarity with the science. Then you proceed into the questions, referring back to the data that you actually are being asked about. It's okay if you don't understand all the science. You're not supposed to understand any science for this section. You're just supposed to be able to get the general idea of what's going on in the graphs. I'm not going to give these away. We're also going to do passage 4, which also is, oh my God, what is going on here? It also looks really horrible. There's also at least 1 or 2 kind of mean questions in these that I'll talk about when we get there. But for now, our job is to do 10 questions in 9 minutes. And so our questions are going to be questions 13 up through 22. That's great. That's exactly 10 questions. And that's how many you have to do in 9 minutes. So let's do that now. Go back to the goal sheet, mark your goal down. We're going to do 10 questions. How many can you miss? When you're ready, guys, tackle passages 3 and 4, questions 13 through 22 in practice test break. Okay, set your timer for 9 minutes and begin. All right, let's take a look at the answers, which, as you know, are at the end. We're looking at questions 13 to 22 in the science, which are here. And I'm going to go over just one from the first passage, because first passage, once you get into the graphs about the bog and the fen, isn't actually that bad. Although question 15 is kind of mean. That's why I'm going to go over it. Then we'll do a 19 and 22. So I'm going to jump around a little bit more here, but I want to hit some that people commonly err on this passage. So let's have a look-see. Starting with the bog fen passage, which if you get the general idea that we just have different things, like here's the depth below the water table. I don't know what water table is, but it sounds like where a water level is, and then if you're going down below that, you're like down under the ground or under the water or whatever. If you read about this at all, you'll figure out that these are like swampy areas. And then there's different concentrations of CH4. There's no way you would know what that means, but I guess CH4 really spikes in this fen here at about 2.5. A lot of these are just point and click questions. Same kind of deal here. This one's got pH, this one's got conductivity. Just look at the word they're asking you about and go refer to that particular graph. Now the hard one here, I think this might be the hardest question in this particular passage, is question 15, because it actually asks you a little bit deeper here. It asks you which of the following is the most likely explanation for the difference in the depth of the bog water table in the 2 years. Maybe you looked at the graph and you're like, yeah, but I see that the water table is different, but I don't know why. And I read some of the text even, and I don't know why. You can probably read more, but there is something to be said, especially in the harder questions on the science, about just using common sense, not worrying that much about the science. You might kick yourself if you got this wrong, especially if you had no clue. But guys, you know what a drought is, right? Is there more water during a drought or less water during a drought? Okay, obviously droughts when, no rain has fallen and there's not much water going on. So let's just look at some of these. A says the amount of groundwater discharged to the bog was higher during the drought. How would it be higher during a drought? Well, I don't know, maybe it got so dry and deserty that like it cracked the earth and released water from, stop it. You're just making up ridiculous things here. Just droughts do not have lots of water. A seems extremely unlikely. How about B? The groundwater was discharged was higher during the drought. Stop now. How about C? The amount of rainfall was higher during the drought. No, it's D because it's the only one that doesn't have something stupid in it. The amount of rainfall was lower during the drought. You know what droughts do. So I hope a lot of you already recognize how dumb that question was and got it right. But even if they ask you something you don't know and you think it's science, or in this case, what, swamp geology? I don't know. You don't need to know anything. You just need to not be a knucklehead and pay attention to what they're saying. Didn't mean to say that you're a knucklehead if you got this wrong. You might be a knucklehead, but that's not, I don't know you yet. Yeah, you get it. All right, let's move on. This passage is uglier, and it actually has one question that's kind of unfair. And if you thought it was question 19, no, it's actually not 19, although 19 does look tricky. How many neutrons, if any, does a nucleus of the isotope of helium listed in table 1 contain? Okay, well, this one starts out like so many questions do, where they say table 1, so you go to table 1. They talk about something with helium in it, and so you go find helium here. And this is actually the thing that we care about. Now, what does make this a little harder than your average question is, wait, they don't tell me in this thing here how many neutrons it has, but they do give you the explanation above. And sometimes on the harder questions, even though we often don't need the text, we might use the text here. So look at this example. They say AZX, where Z is the number of protons, so that's not the number we want. The bottom number, which down here was a 2, don't want that. A is the mass number, which is also equal to Z plus the number of neutrons. So all they're saying is take A, subtract Z, and you get the number of neutrons. And in this case, that answer is 2. So that's why the answer is C. People kind of sometimes overthink that one. And there is a little thinking involved. So I'm not saying that's easy. In fact, that's probably in the top quartile of difficult problems on this science test. But you can get it if you can start with the data they give you, and then if you need to, go back to the text. And that's always the way these work. Start with a graph, go back to the text if you need to. Okay, the last one I want to look at is one that actually really is kind of hard. A lot of people complain about this question because I always say, in our lectures that they don't test science on this section. It's just a graph reading contest. And then, of course, just to be a bunch of trolls, the ACT will contradict me by throwing, 1 or 2 questions that kind of sound like maybe they're science you need to know. I submit, and I always stick to this, there's almost always, with a few rare exceptions, problems where it does really look like you need some science. It's not usually that. It's really a way you can usually just common sense your way out of this. So let's look at this one. Suppose the 4-2 a helium nucleus emitted during an alpha decay and the E emitted during beta decay, oh my God, have the same kinetic energy. Well, they talked about all of this stuff. You don't need to know any of this. They're basically just saying this thing here and this thing here got flung off and they have the same kinetic energy. Which of the 2 particles is moving at a higher speed? Okay, and I don't remember anything about kinetic energy or anything about these things or which one's bigger or any of that stuff. And so I'm feeling kind of clueless on this problem. Before we give up, let's just use a little common sense here. First, this is maybe not the strongest reasoning, but just what looks bigger? Because they do talk about more massive here. Like what looks bigger? One little E guy or this giant 4-2 helium nucleus? Now, if you know anything about science, you might say, well, I think the 4-2 helium nucleus is probably bigger. You could also read a little bit of that text we just talked about how, you know, we have multiple protons and multiple neutrons and stuff like that. Even if you aren't sure that you remember, a good guess that the 4H2 thing is bigger might be a good way to get started on this problem. Okay, so that would get us partway there because, you know, F would make sense, but G would not because this is not less massive, and neither would H, so we could eliminate both of those answers. Now, regarding kinetic energy, maybe you don't remember what that means, but let's just think about this. Let's say that you were hit with a bowling ball that somebody threw at you, and then later you were hit with a marble that somebody threw at you. Now, if they threw those things at the same speed, like 30 miles an hour, what would you rather be hit with, a bowling ball at 30 miles an hour or a marble at 30 miles an hour? Well, I hope you did not answer bowling ball because your brains would be smashed in. Maybe you already were hit with one if you answered that. Something that is bigger doesn't need to be going as fast. If you were hit with a bowling ball and you were hit with a marble and you said, both of those hurt about the same, probably the bowling ball was going a lot slower. And that's what kinetic energy kind of means, is like how much bang does it have? How much power is it packing? So the the 4-2 helium model is basically the bowling ball in this case. And which would need to be moving at a higher speed? No, the bowling ball wouldn't be moving at a higher speed. Your answer here would be J. The little tiny marble would have to be moving at a much higher speed because it is less massive in order to pack the same wall. So yes, J definitely could be solved if you have a strong knowledge of science. But what if you don't? What if you don't know jack about science? How could you stand a chance? Yes, 22 is very hard. Maybe just skip it and don't do this one at all. But I submit that these can be done regardless of whether you have much science knowledge or not. And, you know, even if you're feeling a little bit blank on a question, you can still get these. Okay, guys, so then the last step, of course, is to return to your goal sheet, record your notes. And as you end this video, guys, here, you should be taking these notes from all 4 of these sections, writing them down somewhere. You know, try to think of what you would do if your friend said, hey, can I borrow that pair of shoes that you have? I really, really, really need them on Friday. Can you please remember to bring them to me on Friday? What kind of note do you set for yourself? You need to write it down somewhere. You might forget. Maybe you put an alarm in your phone. Maybe you write it down on a piece of paper and put it by our alarm clock. But you got to write it down somewhere or you might forget and you might screw up, and you don't want that. You don't want that ACT to be the place that you screw up. So guys, please make notes on all this stuff. Please try to figure out what you're still doing wrong. Make a note. And then when you're ready, play this video back again or just repeat the steps because hopefully that's the goal. So guys, thank you. That is all for today. Take some good notes and feel good about putting in some good work. Thank you guys. See you soon. Is it going? I don't know if it's going or not, but here we go. All right.